Right Night is a talk show with published authors, writers, and content creators discussing both the creative and technical sides of writing, as well as the industry surrounding it, from novels to screenplays to comics and more. And now, here's your host, author Travis I. Sivart.
Welcome to Right Night. We'll get to the topic and discussion in just a moment. For those listening to the podcast, we record the podcast on our live stream at twitch.tv/Travis Tavern Talk, and we have a live interactive chat audience. You might hear the sound of the bell ding, and that means I want to interrupt somebody to read a comment or question. For those on the live stream, we won't read off everything you put in chat, but we'll try to get to the most relevant, the most amusing, or some combination of the both. Now, while we introduce ourselves, go and let us know what you're reading, writing, or creating tonight. Okay, and welcome to Right Night. And while you guys are popping that up there in chat, I'll let you know that I am Travis I. Sivart, and the topic tonight is going to be real science and sci-fi, and related to that, if you like sci-fi, check out my Journal of a Stranger series, or Silver and Smith, which is more of cyber pulp, but that's a whole nother topic on itself. Let's see. Aaron, why don't you start by introducing yourself? When you're done, pass it over to Robert.
Okay. Hi, I'm Aaron Kennedy, author of Persona Non Grata, Ships of Valor, future author of the Icarus Black series, currently in production. Been a technical writer for about 25 years, jack of all trades, electrician, heating and air conditioning guy, locksmith, among many other things. Robert?
Hey, I am Robert Turk, author and game designer. And actually, last year I won an award for my science fiction survival horror role-playing game. That's a pick up and play game called Starship Infernum. It runs off of blackjack. It's a lot of fun, and it does not have any hard sci-fi in it, really, at all. Unless you want to put it in there. It's totally cool.
And Aaron,
but a huge sci-fi...
Go ahead, Robert. Sorry.
Huge sci-fi fan, and I'm a big science fan, so I do like putting actual science in everything I write. You can find my stuff at wicked-clever.com. Back to Travis.
Aaron, we should really get a copy of a couple of his games, because they are sit down and play type games, and yeah, I think it'd be a good time.
I'm actually a half hour closer to your house now, too.
I mapped address to address. We're just over an hour away from each other now.
Yes, but that's a lot better than 90 minutes, which it was before.
Sometimes 2 hours with Saturday traffic.
Yes,
But anyhow, going back to this, keep in mind, Robert, you mentioned hard science. The thing is, we don't have to talk about hard science, just real science and science fiction. So I realize most people associate putting real science in your science fiction means it's hard science fiction, but that doesn't always have to be the case. Just like you can do a light and fluffy military sci-fi book. Not common, but... Oh, is it really, Robert? How much is it?
Right now, and I hesitate to... That's why I typed it, because I don't know when this is going to air, whether it'll still be on sale. The hardback is a couple of dollars off. The printed one is a couple dollars off. I think it comes to $22. Normally it's $25. And the PDF version, it's probably around $6. Normally $10.
$6.69. There we go.
There you go.
Okay, and I will look that up more later. It's because
is that something we get direct through you, Turk, or do we go through Conquest Publishing to get that?
You can probably get it at Conquest Publishing. I don't know if they have any copies right now. The best place to get it, my books are available at your local gaming stores. They are in worldwide distribution. You can get them on Amazon. You can get them from my website, or you can get them from Drive-Thru RPG.
Which one do you make the most money at?
I write role-playing games. I don't make money.
That's a fair point.
So
okay. So let's talk about science, putting real science in your science fiction. Whether you're looking at it from a reader, a role player, we'll of course end up talking about movies at some point in time, but I'll move us more towards the writing type thing. So just a quick runaround before we go into heavy detail. Yay or nay? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Does it add to it or distract from it? What do you guys think, Aaron?
It adds to it because there are certain people that want science.
Okay.
There's an expectation.
And we'll come back to all this, and we'll discuss the hell out of it. But Robert?
I am a firm believer that putting actual science in a book is much better than putting fake science in a book. Or worse than that, wrong science, incorrect science in a book.
I love it, personally, when it doesn't bog down the story. If I wanted to
Yeah.
bog it down, I know how to Google, I know how to get a textbook, I know how to take a college course. But, you know what? You guys ever read Michael Crichton Prey about the nanotechnology?
Mm-hmm.
This is a great example where he took some real science, put it in science fiction, explain enough that you feel intelligent, like you got it, without
Right.
bogging it down with extraneous stuff that you're like, ugh.
Well, that was his real strength, was the fact that he did a lot of research and then gave us the blinkest explanation. The
Right.
15 minutes that we needed to remember.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Oh.
And the story moved forward.
It did, and it wasn't bogged down, and you felt, yeah, it's charming when an author can make you feel intelligent about something you know nothing about. It's,
Yeah.
see, Wordwin says, it really pisses me off when a sci-fi author makes up some shit when they could have used real science and it would have been cooler. Go ahead, Robert.
Yes, I agree, but a thought just sparked me because I was thinking about Star Trek, and I know we're focused on writing,
Yeah.
but there is something to be said for imaginative science that still follows the basic guidelines of science, but moves beyond what we understand and are capable of now.
Right.
If we look at Star Trek, we have created many things in today's modern technology that Star Trek prompted by making up. Now, I still say put real science in your book when you can put real science in your writing, but a lot of things that we now have come because, oh, well, they did it in this. Now, how do we really do it? How do we make that happen?
No, that's actually an excellent point, and I'm going to use the parody of Star Trek to kind of deal with that. Galaxy Quest, okay? Galaxy Quest, they do the crunchers in the thing, and they're like, "Why are they in here?" Because it was in the show. No, but it's one of those. There was no reason for those to be there, except for the aliens thought that they needed to be there because they were in the show.
Right.
But that was the logical explanation for why this completely useless thing was there. But it was a logical explanation. And that's the difference between our science and our fantasy in there, is there has to be a logical explanation as to why we're dealing with this piece of whatever it is. It doesn't necessarily have to be technology, just a logical explanation. When we're dealing with science, we're talking about logical conclusions. Orson Scott Card pisses me off because he goes, "Oh, we've got an Ansible device. The ability to communicate at faster than light travel. Basically, you pick up a radio and you can talk across the universe."
Mm-hmm.
He says, "We've got one." And that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. All right.
Does he need to
Well,
go into
I mean-
it to further the story? Does it matter why it exists or where it came from?
Yes, because it's a key plot point. He for the Ender's Game series, it's a key plot point of the ability to communicate at that level of speed. You need something. It's just it's a hole, and
Okay.
it.
In a lot of ways, I would say he's a little more science fantasy and things than he is.
He is.
Science fiction.
And it's one of those. I'm like, okay, willful suspension of disbelief, and I'm on board with it. It's like, okay, cool. I'm willing to accept this. They've got the ability.
Whereas, the Expanse series, which, if you've heard me rave about it on others of these podcasts, it's one of my favorite series right now. And I am not a huge hard sci-fi reader.
Right.
But the Expanse series, and I haven't seen much of the TV show, I've read the books. They clearly, these authors have researched the science
extensively.
Like, you don't have fast extensively, but they don't throw it at you. They weave it into their story, and they only explain things when it's crucial to understanding the story moving forward. And they don't have fast and light travel or fast and light communication. That's one of the cool things about this. Is if they're out in the asteroid belt and they're talking to people back on Earth, they talk about, now we have to sit here and wait 16 minutes for that message to get there. And it's a way of interjecting the science into the writing that's really cool, but it keeps the story moving. And that's it.
With Orson Scott Card, yeah, he was writing in a sci-fi world, but he was writing a psychological story.
Check.
And The Expanse is definitely a character-driven story in a sci-fi world. And it's beautiful, by the way. It's these writers, it's amazing. They're two authors who came together under the one pen name. And however they've worked it out, it's incredible, because you can tell when it's one in particular, because he gets this one line of prose that's just like, God, that's a beautiful sentence. And the other guy is probably the science guy. I'm guessing. I have no idea, but it's incredible. Word-O-Win did say regarding Ender's Game that Orson Scott Card didn't talk about that communication thing you mentioned, Aaron, because then people might figure out the twist at the end. And Word-O-Win also says they found out regarding The Expanse, they also found out they made some mistakes and fixed things going forward. Because, as Word-O-Win mentioned, when we were still in the intro and the topic was the only thing apparent, things change. And if you love writing sci-fi, there comes a point in time where your sci-fi is now outdated. Now, that might be long after you pass, or it might be next week when they make a breakthrough and you're like, oh, I published 3 books using this concept. Go ahead, Robert.
Right.
So, a few weeks back, I bought a hybrid car. The way the hybrid car works is, friggin' your braking power charges your battery, which runs your motor, not your engine, the motor, which friggin' increases your gas mileage. Friggin' Robert Heinlein talks about shipstones way back in the 50s and 60s as kind of this concept. Basically, your car any braking has to pay for the energy forward. It's the same concept, but it's basically catching up. He was using, hey, we got to have braking power and so forth. So the science has to catch up, and now you're looking at it going, oh, well, if you were to read the same book today, it looks outdated. Whereas, in fact, he's ahead of his time.
I'm going to go back to Expanse real quick. Speaking of flipping, speaking of braking, in The Expanse, one thing they cover through all the books multiple times is when these ships are flying through space and they're going from Earth to Saturn or Earth to Neptune, you have a multiple day to multiple month point where that ship then flips and points in the other direction, uses its own propulsion system as a braking system. And I'm sure other people have done this. I'm sure if I read more sci-fi.
L. Ron Hubbard talks about that.
But this is so well done and smooth and natural in there. And the way they talk about, the shifting of the gravity depending what plane your ship is on, or plane as in geometric plane.
Right. Well, and it's all about the acceleration.
Right.
It's not about the speed. It's about, are we accelerating, which creates the feel of gravity, which gives you the G's.
Right.
And once we stop accelerating, we will continue at that speed without feeling the G's. And at some point, you got to flip around, or you're going to crash hard into wherever you're going.
Right. Because it's not like just putting on the brakes on wheels. You've got to thrust in the other direction. And
yes.
But that's a really fun thing with the science. Aaron, I'm sorry, or Robert?
No, you're fine.
One of the early science fiction writers was Edgar Allan Poe, and his science absolutely does not hold up to a modern audience. There is he may have wrote what he absolutely understood to be the case at the time. It turned out a lot of it was wrong, and so reading it as a modern audience, for instance, the shooting a cannon at the moon, right? Or talking about going to outer space in a weather balloon. There was a point where I wanted to, as a storyteller, present Edgar Allan Poe as a character and started reading his entire body of work. His horror is great. He was very popular as a science fiction writer of his time, but to a modern audience, the science is wrong. It does not hold
Are you thinking
up.
of Jules Verne?
No, I'm thinking of Edgar Allan Poe.
No, Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, okay, Ben Franklin was one of the guys that created the first batteries. He coined the term battery for electrical stuff.
Sure.
So electrical theory didn't come about until the late 1700s. Edgar Allan Poe died in 1849. So we're only talking
You know what I find amazing?
50-year time period for that portion of science.
Right, but we were talking about how the science catches up to what the authors already imagined. Sometimes an author gets it flat out wrong, and it does not hold up.
I find it amazing when I read a book that's 100 or 150 years old, and the science is still right.
Yes.
And this happens a lot with medicine, and it makes me look at our modern medicine going, okay, so now we wash our hands more, but there's not a lot of difference between what they did then and what we do now, besides we have a cleaner operating arena.
Right. I mean, germ theory. We've learned
Right.
about how to and we don't use leeches as often.
No, we go to maggots because they're sanitary.
They're useful.
We still use them and maggots,
Right.
but not as often. A leech is not the cure for everything. No.
No, bleeding is less of a thing. So yeah, science, but it's fun when they get it right. And I read something and I'm like, oh my god, how backwards will we seem in 150 years?
Well, the idea of fingerprints and stuff like that goes back to Sherlock Holmes. That wasn't proven science. That was a conjecture.
It's still not proven science. Matter of fact, it's disproved science.
I have fingerprints. I can look at them.
That's true.
They're there.
That is the
I know
proven
they're
part. But the uniqueness with the amount of people we have on the planet, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, they're nowhere near unique.
Okay. So,
Oh.
when I write, I love to put science into my work for a few reasons. First of all, I love the research, and there's some things I'm just fascinated by, and I want to share things about graphene or magnetic propulsion or whatever with other people. Now, something I will say, if you're going to write real science into your books, as we discussed earlier with Michael Crichton, there's a right level. If you put too much in, it can get boring or show you actually don't know as much as you think you do. If you put too little in, it can not support your story the way you want it to, or make you sound lacking in knowledge. There's a middle ground you got to kind of seek out. Yeah, Aaron?
Touches of flavor. It's like salting a dish. You don't need a whole lot, but you need just a hint, something to bring the fat and the flavor out. I'm going to use my own book here. I've got one of the primary characters of the book is an AI. It's a sentient ship. I touch on how they come about, and I say, okay, it's the interrelationship of the hyperspace drive. I believe I explained how the hyperspace works in a paragraph and a half, and I'll leave it at that. I get out of that as quickly as I possibly can. I say, hey, every AI we got was linked to a hyperspace at one time or another. Done, and I'm out. I touch it and leave it alone. Give the reader the chance to do that, but I try to do that almost anywhere. I leave description alone wherever possible because I'm a firm believer that the reader has a better imagination than my narrative skill. They're going to fill in the gaps on their own, and they're going to be able to go, oh, I know this concept. I've heard this. and they'll get to where they need to get.
Yeah.
And hopefully, if I didn't do a good enough job, my alpha, my beta readers, and my editors are going to catch it for me and go, hey, you need to expand on this a little.
Yeah, absolutely. Travis also brought up a point about researching the science and finding stuff that he's cool and finding ways to put it in his book. That absolutely, it goes back to that phrase that you hear all the time for authors is write what you know, but that can include research.
Yes.
Is going, and if you want this in your book, learn about it. Go learn it so that you can write realistically about it. Now, Persnickety Jones, my middle grade book, my most recent published book, Persnickety Jones and the Pirates of Undertow. It is a modern fantasy adventure story. Her brother gets sucked down the bathtub drain. Okay, not scientifically accurate. That can't happen. You cannot get sucked down the drain into the sewers and go on a magical boat ride with talking animals.
What if you're hiding under a tub and there's a tornado above it?
No. But
okay.
There comes a point in the book where they are going through a lightning storm. All right? And there's the very real possibility that they are sailing in this metal dinghy that they could get electrocuted. It's scary for the characters. I wanted it to be scary for the reader. And I thought I had a solution for them. I thought, you know what? If they put on rubber galoshes, they're grounded. They won't get zapped by electricity. That's why electricity goes through the car or through you if you have your rubber shoes. That is not correct. I went and I was like, I don't know what would happen. What happens if you get struck by lightning on a metal boat in the water? Would it kill you? If you put on rubber shoes, yes, it will. But I had to go and research how does electricity work in this specific situation, and change what I had written, because I don't want to give kids bad science, especially bad science that if they follow what the characters in the book did, could end up killing them if they happen to be in the same circumstances.
If only he knew an electrician.
Right. Well, they had to create a lightning rod on the boat to take the electricity if the boat got zapped and channel it to the water past them.
Does the boat get zapped?
The science behind the boat does get zapped multiple times.
Oh, nice.
And they survive because they made a lightning rod.
Because they science.
And actually the characters, because that's the science. They start to put on rubber galoshes, and the lead character says, wait, that's not actually what you do. We learned about this in science class, and explains to them what to do, how to get out of this situation. But I would have written it totally 100% wrong. And I've been on boats, sailboats in lightning storms, but I would have written it wrong if I had not stopped and said, you know what? I don't know that I fully understand this. Let me go look it up and see what the actual science, the actual way to do this. So that's my little story right there.
That's a good little story. Look at you using science and all that.
Using science.
We're going to science the shit out of this.
Yeah.
Ew. That's like intestine research. Because you're going to science the out of. Anyhow.
I mean, if you're writing a combat scene, or if you're writing a murder mystery, you got to know the science of how, is this wound in your gut? How long is it going to take for that person to die?
Actually, I had this conversation live on Twitch with John of Conquest Publishing, and I believe Wordowin was there also when writing book 1 of Silver and Smith. We got to talking about how bullet wounds are largely, the death from bullet wounds are largely based on that person's mental state and anxiety after being shot. And how what may not be a fatal wound, somebody could die from because basically psychologically they've ramped it up so much they go into shock.
And shock is what kills you.
Other people who, they get shot and it goes through because of, adrenaline, they don't even know they've been hit and they keep moving. Of course, this, as Aaron just mentioned, blood loss changes this, hitting a vital organ changes this,
right.
Snapping the leg off at the knee so they can't stand, that puts a damper on things. But yeah, there's other people who can take a shot and keep moving So the mental state has a lot to do with that too, and we discussed that. We also discussed the difference in smell of different animals' feces, whether they're a herbivore, carnivore, or omnivore, live in a Twitch stream while I was writing, and yeah,
Yep.
because there's a big difference.
Who is it? Spider
Robin,
Harrison.
Robinson,
Robinson. Robinson. Sorry, Spider Harrison's the DJ. Freaking Spider Robinson's the.
and there's Harry Harrison, the stainless steel rat.
Correct. Yeah, one of my favorite authors. He talks about it in his Death Killer series.
Right.
Where if you want to keep deer away from your property, you piss on the thing. It doesn't work if you're an herbivore. Vegetarian.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
It's great that you had to throw vegetarian in there in case people are like, am I an herbivore?
Look. We got to explain science.
That's
so
right.
what you're saying here is that if you just eat vegetables, your piss doesn't stink.
Well, no, if you just
No,
eat...
no.
Because asparagus, yes, it will.
Right? Or broccoli. Yes, absolutely it will.
It just won't scare deer away.
It won't scare deer away.
It'll attract gophers. Be careful. I was outside whizzing on the tree, and because I'm a vegetarian, suddenly there was a woodchuck gnawing on my wood. Let me tell you how much. That's right.
Oh, so that's not good science. Back to good science.
But
I don't have.
No. Does it progress the story? Does it help the story? Or is it fluff? Is it minutia that we don't care about? I was doing a beta read for a buddy of mine, and he explained he had a stream of consciousness novel where he explained every little piece of minutia that was related to science. Yes, that's the look. And some of it was good. Others of it was like, okay, no, we got trim. We got to get rid of this. Because it didn't help the story. All it was just added word count. And yapping.
right. I also think how you deliver it makes a lot of difference. You know, if it's coming from, as we've discussed in other episodes of Right Night, if it's being experienced by your characters, so not only is it adding to the story, but your character's learning it, so it doesn't sound like or feel like you're lecturing your reader. You can lecture the characters all you want, and your reader is standing there third person, enjoying it or learning along with it, one of the two, or feeling sorry for them, or whatever you're portraying in that scene. But yeah, the way you present the information, and then again, as we've mentioned, relevance after you do. If we're going to explain, geothermic layers of the planet, and it never comes into play, but why?
Right.
Was that mentioned?
So there is one time when I think you can stray away from best science to create an emotional connection. And this struck me watching a movie the other day. Going back to the Expanse series, their ships don't have windows, all right? Because they have computer screens. The cockpit of the ship can be anywhere in the ship. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Because of the way they fly and the way they flip. And having windows in the depths of space is a bad idea.
Right.
All right? It's another point for catastrophic failure. And so I was thinking about this and thinking, why do our spaceships then still have windows? With our computer technology, with our cameras and everything, why do our spaceships still have windows? And I was watching this Netflix movie, what's the name of it? Solitude, or it's the one where there's an extra crew member on there. All right, and they realize that they're going to run out of air. It ties back to a classic science fiction story.
Right.
And it's not Solitude. I don't remember the name of it, but it just came out on Netflix. They have windows on the ship, And that creates a wonderful human emotional connection.
Yes.
Because they can look out those windows and see the expanse of space, and they can see the dwindling Earth, and they can see what they are leaving behind. And it is that human connection of being able to see that and know it's out there and physically see it and not see it off of the computer screen that makes an emotional connection. So even though the good science says you shouldn't have windows on your spaceships, I don't actually see us as humans embracing that.
Right.
Because we want to see where the hell we're going.
Right. And even if your computer screen shows it, if you have a catastrophic failure, you want to be able to look out the window and go, oh, damn, I'm about to die. And let me read a couple comments, if I may. Ghost helped you out saying, it's the Stowaway, I think. I just watched it.
Yeah, Stowaway.
And,
I didn't finish it.
And then John of Conquest Publishing says, use science versus jargon only if it's useful. But usually jargon is actually what characters in the book are saying. And that's fair, because you can make it feel science-y by using jargon. And that's great. But in Silver and Smith 2 that I'm currently editing, there's a point in time where I did a few episodes with my editor, and there was one piece of science that she happens to know about because of her day-to-day job. And she actually went, that's actually great, because most people get that wrong, and you got it right. And I was so happy to hear this, because it wasn't something I researched, it's what intuitively felt correct to me, and I've been using for a while. So to hear I was just right as it was, I'm like, oh, well, that's great to hear, because, yeah, it wasn't even something I thought to go research.
I would add to what John said, and what you were sort of saying there. The jargon is useful, especially it's the way your characters talk.
Right.
But at some point, if your characters are talking in jargon and acronyms, you got to clue the reader in to what that means. Because if you've ever listened to military people, especially military mechanics, talking about stuff, I have no clue what they're talking about. They know what they're talking about, but if it doesn't convey to your reader what they're talking about, that dialogue shouldn't even be there.
No, I actually disagree on that one, okay? If you ever get a chance, go back and listen to the old Dragnet radio show, okay? Quick, easy to listen. They're all available online, but it'll start with, like, pick up a phone call. Nope, you want such and such. Nope. And they'll use terms like APB and things like that. But it's all context-driven. It's picked up throughout the course of the show.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
They do it seamlessly, and you've got to do it right.
Right.
Jargon is great, but you've got you've got to make it work correctly. And like swearing, okay? Ari in my novel doesn't. He swears, but he doesn't drop F-bombs. He doesn't drop C-bombs. He doesn't use modern swears. He'll say things like Einstein's ghost. Phrasing like that. The book is technically PG because he never swears, but he's swearing the entire time. Just not. He'll use terms like bloody instead of the traditional ones. But you pick it up via context. Who was it? Dragon Riders of Pern did the same kind of thing. They did substitutions, but you knew what they were.
Right.
But
that's all I'm actually saying. We're agreeing here. Is make it clear to you have to find the ways to make it clear to your readers. You don't have to come out and say HUD stands for heads up display, but you have to make it clear to your readers. If you just use jargon, like two people in that situation may talk without ever cluing anybody in about what they're talking about, that won't work for a reader. You have to find those ways, like Dragnet did it, or like The Expanse does it, to clue your readers into what they're talking about.
And then other times, it's fun to have your reader be clueless. For example, if you ever were in one of those old diner-type restaurants and they had all these shorthand terminologies that they would shout back and forth between the kitchen and the waitress. And we've seen these in commercials and other movies and all these other things, and it's just hilarious. You're like, what are they talking about? I have no idea. I know all these words, but not in this way. And that can be fun to create a scene with that. Aaron?
Sure. Ghost brings up a great point. Ghost, you are absolutely correct that we do understand how much the middle grade books, we understand how much those characters would swear if they could.
Right.
Kids swear. They've got dirty mouths. We come from the future. We swore. We get it. But publishers aren't going to allow that. So we've got to be creative about it. The opening scenes in It. Now, that's not a middle grade book, but you've got the kid calling each other's a-holes until right towards the end where he actually drops asshole. And it's taboo. Right before he gets his arm ripped off.
You can get that tucked back up in if it drops.
His arm?
No, you said he... Never mind, go on.
Yeah, okay. You're a-hole?
Yep.
But
so, basically what I'm seeing here from Ghost is Ghost needs another word, because Ghost is Australian, so the C word is common there. But with a middle grade book that might go further than Australia, needs a synonym. I mean, can you just call it the C-bomb?
that's what I typically use in polite conversation.
They
Or see
dropped
you
the
next
C-bomb.
Tuesday.
Yeah. You little C-bomb.
I would have to read the sentence to help you with that. I cannot think of a middle grade appropriate euphemism for that term.
That conveys the same level of
Vulgarity. Yeah, or at least vulgarity to an American audience. It might not be a very vulgar word to an Australian audience, but when it comes to writing for middle grade, you're not just writing for the kids. You're writing for the kids' teachers and parents.
Yes.
and the librarian who's going to make that recommendation.
And the librarian who reads it. And the librarians that I know for elementary school, at least, read every book that comes into their library before they give it to kids.
Right. And by the way, John says, as an example, during a casualty, the characters are shouting out tech jargon, but the point is the casualty and the jargon clues you into it's a technical issue. Same thing for the food thing in the kitchen, where you hear different things and you can kind of imagine, a lone survivor on a raft or whatever it might be. Well, we know they're making breakfast food. The raft could be toast and it could be an egg on it. So, yeah, you can kind of piece it together, though you're not sure. And that can be fun to confuse. Go ahead.
You can do that via after actions, things like that. Using John's example here, you have a shouting match, but you can have a courts martial after the fact, or an after action report back briefing where they got to explain what's going on, where the guy's just explaining, okay, this is what's happened. Okay, hey, what does that term mean? Oh, such and such, sir. There's a great meme that was running around where PC Flowers apprehended the thing. Well, we need PC Flowers to write a report. PC Flowers can't do that. Why not? You know what? I want one anyway. PC Flowers is a dog. Police Constable Flowers is a dog. So they friggin' went and caught that. I chased bad guy. I caught bad guy. I bit bad guy, and they put the dog's paw print as a signature.
Nice. Okay, let's get some closing thoughts for this topic of real science in your sci-fi. I think, Robert, why don't you take this away first?
Sure. I go back to my closing thoughts on everything. Move your story forward. That's the point of telling a story. That's the point of writing fiction, is to tell your story, move it forward. Use real science any point you can, but you don't have to get bogged down in explaining that science. Let it be part of the narrative. Let it be part of your story. Do not write fake science, because that could kill kids on a boat in a lightning storm. Figure out the real stuff, do your research, and write your damn story.
Aaron?
I'm going to flip that backwards. Everything you write should keep them in the willful sense of disbelief. Okay? Don't write anything that's going to pull them out of that. Anything that makes your reader go, what the fuck? Should be avoided. Pardon my French, I apologize. But yeah, it's one of those, if they go, huh? No, that ain't right. You need to trim it. You either need to fix it or trim it. If you're going to use a piece of science, it needs to be correct. It needs to be believable. If it's made up, you can make science up. You can make all the science up you want. But it's got to keep in that realm of plausible disbelief. The movie Fifth Element's got all kinds of plausible disbelief in it. Star Wars got lightsabers, laser swords. Those aren't real, but we believe it. So, go with that. Just don't let the audience go, huh?
Very good.
Travis?
I'm going to wrap this up by saying consistency is important. Make sure your science matches all the way throughout your book or your series, etc. And it's okay to disagree quickly with Robert right there, to have fake science. But if you're going to have fake science, make it something that we don't even have science for yet. You know,
Right.
Teleporting between interdimensional realities across the multiverse. Got to use fake science for that one. But when it comes down to a few things, you know, that are, I don't know, I almost want to say flat Earth, but let's wrap this up. Say goodnight to everybody. And we'll get out of here, guys.
Oh. Good night. And yeah, I'm with John. Lightning swords, laser swords are coming. I saw Mythbusters. They made one.
They're working on it. Okay. Have a great night, guys. We'll catch you on the next episode of Right Night. Let's do the outro. Before we go, I want to remind everyone that you can email us at rightnightshow@gmail.com. That's right with a W, night with an N, show@gmail.com. To let us know your thoughts on the show's topic, suggest other topics you'd like to hear us discuss, or just have a message read out on air to someone in your life. Thanks to everyone for supporting the show by downloading the podcast, sharing it on social media, grabbing some shirt stickers and mugs from bit.ly/tavern merch, or barware patches and hats from bit.ly/tavern merch too. That's bit.ly/tavern merch or tavern merch followed by the number 2. Thanks to everyone who joined us live at twitch.tv/Travis Tavern Talk, and everyone who supports the tavern by subscribing, posting, throwing bits, raids, and most of all, commenting.
Thank you for joining author Travis I. Sivart and the other writers, content creators, and all-around amazing people for our discussion here on Right. Join us again soon, and until you do, make sure you create with passion, enjoy the journey, and remember, every night can be right night.
Okay, and we're